Hello, my musical theater friends, and welcome to another episode of Thursday Thoughts. Today's Thursday Thoughts is a little bit different than how I envisioned the series as a whole, but with everything going on this week, I feel like I would be doing a real disservice if I didn't address the events that have been leading to mass protests in the US, here in Canada, and around the world. Inequality through race and through other factors has been a huge problem for centuries around the world. And I think it really comes down to the idea of people's perception of power. Let me say first of all that this is going to be a gross oversimplification. We could look for hours and hours, for days and weeks at a time about this issue and still really get nowhere. But I think a really important factor in it is that those with power have traditionally tried to hold on to that power by any means necessary. And this often means oppressing those who are different from them, or taking the power away from those who are different from them. Race has historically been one of the more visually evident criteria by which people oppress, leading to things like the American slave trade, apartheid, Canadian residential schools, so many different things. But there's other factors that can delineate oppression. Religion, the Holocaust, for an example. Gender identity and sexuality, such as the Holocaust. But also, gender, age, income inequality, so many others. I couldn't possibly list all the different ways that people have tried to oppress others by taking away their power. But also many of these divides are interrelated in that, gender divides lead to pay divides. People of color who are also members of the queer community are doubly at risk, and so forth. And so the bottom line is really that people with power will have an instinct to do whatever they have to do to hold on to that power. I should note I primarily cite Western examples of these, but they're in no way unique to the West. These are just where I feel most confident bringing examples. For example, the religious, racial conflict between India and Pakistan, for example, outside of seeing one rather unrealistic episode of Doctor Who, for example, I am really not qualified to even really bring it up as an example, because it's something I need to work on, and it's something I need to do more research on, and I will be doing more research for sure. That's part of my my next steps for sure. So the key to allyship. What is allyship? Allyship is lending our power, or our privilege, really, as from not being a member of a marginalized community to the fight that a marginalized community is having. So the key to allyship, really, I see one of the big keys is recognizing that the privilege that we have is inherently our own power. We who have this power can use it to either contribute to oppression of marginalized communities, or to become allies to those very same communities. If we want to call ourselves allies, we have a duty to empower those who society deems as powerless in whatever that means, based on the specific situation. The most important part, I think, of being an ally, that many well-intentioned allies lack, however, is acknowledging that we are contributing to the conversation. We're not turning the conversation around to be all about us. The conversation is still about the marginalized community that we're contributing to. Many of us who do unintentionally turn the conversation to be around us are not even aware that we're doing this. We've all seen videos of protests where that one person is what sparks a protest to turn, an otherwise peaceful protest, to turn violent. We've all seen that one or two people who may think that they're being really good allies by attending protests and letting their voices be heard, but through escalating a destruction of property or escalating vandalous behavior, that kind of deflects the attention, usually unintentionally, away from the issues at hand. Now, I don't mean this in any way to be criticism of the riots or the looting or anything that's going on now. I'm not well educated enough to really have an opinion on that yet. I don't. There's just so much going on, and it's happening so quickly that I'm a little bit behind in educating myself about the stuff that's going on. So that's not a comment on that. I'm thinking about more sort of historically, not so much right now. Right? Many well-seeking allies or well-meaning allies are making some simple mistakes that actually detract from the fight rather than contributing to it in a positive way. And so one of the resources, I did a lot of research and a lot of, although I am a member of a marginalized community myself, where I live in Southern Ontario, I am very, very fortunate to not really feel that oppression in the same way, partly because the community I'm a member of is not a visually distinct marginalized community, and partly because we just have a lot more rights than other parts in the world, which is really, really nice. And so I consider myself someone with privilege in most social justice fights and causes. And so I've done a lot of research. I've done a lot of research and a lot of talking to people, members of various marginalized communities, and talking about what it means to be an ally and what people in marginalized communities look for in allies to be effective and to be supportive and all of that. So one of the best sort of at a glance resources that I've come up with is a website called The Guide to Allyship, guidetoallyship.com. I'll leave a link in the description as well of this video. And they have some wonderful sort of at a glance tips about being a positive ally to marginalized communities. And there's lots of resources out there in general for being an ally. In general, but those of us who are artists, be it performing artists, I'm a performing artist, so I'm coming at this from a performing arts perspective, but other kinds of artists as well, we're put in difficult situations sometimes as allies that are unique to us being artists. We inherently want to share the stories of oppressed communities through our art, but we ourselves are not always members of those communities. Sometimes our work brings forward impactful perspectives on the oppression that we're discussing. More often than not these days, though, there's missteps that can actually set the fight back. So I've put together through a bunch of research 6 things that we can consider as artist allies to marginalized communities through our work. And this is not exhaustive. These are just sort of 6 big tips. If you have any other ideas, if you think I've missed something, if you disagree with something, I would love to continue this conversation. Please leave a comment or message me directly. And any way you feel comfortable to continue the conversation, because I am so interested in this conversation and in being a better ally. So, 6 things to consider as an artist ally. Number 1, trying to be as authentic as possible in our portrayal of the struggles faced by marginalized communities in our piece. Lack of authenticity means, at best, a well-meaning attempt that misses the mark in its impact, or at worst, is something truly offensive or actually hurtful to the cause. By presenting an authentic, sensitive piece, the goal is to invigorate and support the community that we are representing, not to make them feel like we're fighting the battle for them, or that we're taking the fight out of their hands, that we're telling their story for them, anything like that. On that note, number 2 is considering whether we are even an appropriate person to be telling the story in the first place. One of the most impactful ways to transfer the inherent power that comes with our privilege as allies is to allow a marginalized community to tell their own story, especially if we can provide resources or a platform that comes along with our privilege that members of that community would not otherwise be able to use or access. If, for example, you're a self-producing performance artist, consider lending your production resources to a director or performers from the marginalized community you're trying to represent. If you're a director, consider the implications that your casting is going to have on the authenticity of the piece. At very, very least, bring on a consultant or a team of consultants who are members of the marginalized community to help you to craft an honest, authentic, respectful piece that will actually contribute your voice as an ally and not detract from the message or messages that that community wants to put forward in their fight against oppression and marginalization. Number 3, educating ourselves. This should really be number 1. It just didn't work as well with the flow. Educating ourselves about the issues. There's no such thing as over-education. You cannot educate yourself too much about something like this. The history, the issues, the fights, the specific situations, the broader context of any pieces of that you're considering. Get as much information as you can, first-hand sources in the marginalized community. First-hand sources being actual members. Talk to them. Look for resources that are written or created by members of that marginalized community. For example, if your performance piece is about racial relations, talk to people of color about their perspective on the specific struggle that's mentioned in your piece. If we're presenting a piece about sexuality or gender expression or gender identity, make sure we understand how this story fits into the whole, the whole sort of situation and issue before diving in and crafting that piece of work. By educating ourselves, we are ensuring authenticity in our storytelling, and we're lending credibility to our work. Number 4, recognizing and acknowledging our implicit biases in our work as a result of our position of privilege. This is so important. We can try to minimize these biases, as discussed above, by trying to make sure we are empowering marginalized communities and things, but at the end of the day, if we are involved, our biases are there. Our implicit biases as being members of privileged community are present. And by acknowledging them, we're saying to the marginalized community that we are working with them rather than imposing our biases. And on that leads kind of into being willing to stand up, even when we're scared or uncomfortable. Generally, people who have more power, more privilege, who are not actively lending themselves as true allies to a cause, they're going to be made uncomfortable by a truthful representation of their power and privilege. And they may take actions to try and stop or suppress your performance. And to me, I say this is generally a sign that you're on the right track as an ally. If the marginalized community is trying to stop your performance, if other true allies are trying to stop your performance, that's saying, oh, maybe we need to look and revisit what we're doing. If the people in power are the ones who are scared or uncomfortable and making threats or taking action to try and stop your work, that to me says you're on the right track as an ally. But if you have a different opinion, by all means, contribute it to the conversation. I'm open to that. Remember that people with power are trying to hold on to that power. I mean, that's not 100% universal, but it's a pretty common thing, that people with power, which comes with privilege, are trying to hold on to that power, no matter what the cost is to them. So stand up. I say to that, stand up, stay strong, and we should continue to present our work. Number 6, finally, listening to criticism, accepting it with grace and humility, lending power and a voice to those people whose voices are otherwise not able to be heard as readily. Whether that means making changes to your work as a result of this criticism, or acknowledging the criticism as an opportunity for ourselves to grow and learn, by accepting criticism, we, again, are showing the marginalized community that we are willing to work with them to tell their story, and that we want their authentic voices to be heard through our work. So lots of resources available. One of them I mentioned before, the Guide to Allyship, a crowdsourced guide. It's constantly changing. Its contributors are members of underinvested communities who have come forward to volunteer their contributions to the guide. And I really I encourage you, if you are interested in knowing more, doing a quick Google search is great and it brings up many excellent results, but there's also some less excellent results out there. So really look, if you're interested in learning more about allyship, really look for what members of underinvested communities, underprivileged communities are looking for in allies. What do they want? How will they best have their voices heard? Many resources, online resources, are community specific. GLAD has a wonderful page for being an ally to the LGBTQ community, various resources on being allies to Indigenous peoples, race-based allyship. But really, there's no substitute for actually talking to people. Especially if a lot of our allyship is going to be more local, on the local level, which I think most people will. Talking to local people, what are the specific issues that need to be raised now, here and now? That's really, really important. So I leave it to all of my ally friends out there to explore, discover resources that are specific to your own situations, to your own interests as an ally. Thank you so much for tuning into my video today. I want to thank everyone who helped to contribute to this, and to all of the resources that are out there that I was able to consult, all the people and all the non-people resources online, whether online books, articles, and things like that. It's really, really important. If you want to add to this conversation, I'm totally open to continuing this conversation. Leave a comment below. If you appreciated this video, please give it a like and share it to your own community. I would love nothing more than to share these kind of guidelines to so many different well-meaning allies who just need a little bit more help. So in making their allyship really, really impactful. Also, please consider supporting my channel, giving it a subscribe. Next week, we're going to be premiering the first episode of my new Top 10 Tuesday series. So if you like musical theater, definitely keep an eye out for that. Until then, please, please, please stay healthy and stay safe. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you soon back here.